cultural significance of cumbias and vallenatos' complicated travels to the United States and beyond cannot be properly understood without referring to the nature and meaning of the cultural and racial mixing that originally produced these genres in Colombia. Moreover, these genres did not originate in the primarily mestizo interior areas that later sent most immigrants into the United States, but rather on Colombia's tri-ethnic northern coast, whose people are the racially mixed descendants of Africans, natives, and Europeans. The aesthetic sensibilities of contemporary Colombia's Afro-descendants, whose tropical polyrhythmic aesthetics were credited for propelling cumbia into international circulation back in the 1950s, have since been largely overlaid or replaced by the cultural sensibilities of mostly working-class mestizo people, first in Colombia and then in Peru, Ecuador, Argentina, and Mexico. The more recent variants of global cumbias circulating in cosmopolitano dance clubs, in contrast, seem to be re-Africanizing cumbia's rhythmic orientation, although, as I note below, in a problematically unreflective way. The roots and routes of cumbia and vallenato in historical perspective. In order to properly understand the interlocking relationship between cumbia's roots and its Pan-American and then global routes, Colombia's geocultural complexities must be first taken into account. One of the most geographically diverse countries in Latin America, Colombia's geocultural regions include Amazonian lowlands and vast Orinocan grasslands that are home to indigenous groups and more recent mestizos colonists, as well as dense forests along the Pacific coast co-inhabited by the black descendants of escaped slaves and the region's remaining indigenous communities. The regions most pertinent to this discussion, however, are the primarily mestizo Andean mountains and valleys of the interior, and the tri-ethnic northern Caribbean coast of Colombia, colloquially known as La Costa. Most of the coast's original indigenous groups were decimated during the Spanish invasion, but vibrant, if struggling, indigenous communities still inhabit various parts of Colombia's coastline. In the colonial period, enslaved Africans were brought to the coast to construct the massive fortifications surrounding the economically crucial port city of Cartagena, from which the riches plundered from the interior of the continent were loaded aboard galleons headed for Spain. Enslaved Africans were also put to work as boatmen on the Magdalena River, which served as the primary transportation link to the interior, where the capital city of Santa Fe de Bogota was located. The descendants of these Africans, connected by maritime trade to the Afro-Caribbean island cultures to the north, have given the coast and its culture a distinctively Afro-Caribbean flavor. Today, the majority of the contemporary costeño population is a mix of blacks, mulattos, zambos, which are offspring of black and Indian parentage, mestizos, and whites. The more recent descendants of European, especially Italian, Middle Eastern, especially Lebanese, immigrants who settled in Colombia in the first half of the 20th century have further complicated the coast's diverse demographic and cultural profile. Phenotypically speaking, the population inhabiting the savannas, which are lowland plains, surrounding Cartagena tends to be blacker, while those inhabiting the more easterly region surrounding the Sierra Nevada are more likely to be mestizo. Whites tend to be concentrated in urban areas. Despite these variations in terms of culture, costeños, regardless of color, are perceived when compared to other regions as relatively homogeneous. In contrast, the people inhabiting the country's Andean mountain ranges, stretching north-south through the interior sections of the country, are predominantly mestizo. A notable exception is the population of the interior lowlands of the Cauca Valley and its primary city of Cali, which have a larger percentage of inhabitants of African descent. The mostly mestizo inhabitants of the cities of Bogota and Medellin, known in the vernacular as Cachacos and Paisas respectively, but especially their white or light-skinned ruling elites have historically prided themselves on being more entrepreneurial, modern, and civilized than those in other regions with larger proportions of black or indigenous inhabitants. The racial mixed inhabitants of the northern coast, in particular, have been stereotyped as indolent, promiscuous, vulgar, and loud. This regional hierarchy is cross-cut by a highly stratified class structure that correlates strongly with race, with white and light-skinned ruling elites at the top, racially mixed middle sectors, and blacks and indigenous natives at the bottom. Even white elites from the economically vibrant and culturally sophisticated coastal port cities of Barranquilla and Cartagena have been tainted in the eyes of their highland peers by their association with the coast's racially mixed culture, especially its blackness.